it doesn't take long to look on some quite big financial services websites to find content that is quite seriously out of date.
Yeah. So firstly, welcome to anyone watching this and our latest edition in Sense of Identity, our podcast series, where I'm delighted to welcome the co-founders of Money Alive, Ian Beestin and John Glover. Welcome, gents.
Welcome. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Adam, for having us.
And of course, Adam, as I should say there. Yeah, but I really appreciate you joining us. I just figured it would be quite nice for the four of us to chat around various topics in the industry, really, but just a few general intro words. I mean, you guys have been involved in all walks and areas of the financial services industry, as we have for many years, intermediary included, and investment management, media, all sorts of areas. But I think what I was keen to try and sort of start touching upon was some of the challenges we both had in terms of bringing the market up to into the 21st century. And perhaps, just look at some of the things you're doing where your tech's been applied and that sort of stuff, really. And we'll meander around the market and see where we end up.
Yeah, I guess between us, we're working in comms. We're trying to improve engagement. We are trying to help people through personalization and relating to content, relevancy, and bring forward education and advice. I think that's all really important to everything that we're all about. So there were some common themes between our businesses, and obviously, both being small businesses trying to work with some very, very big ones as well, which is a challenge,
and some mutual ones as well, Adam.
And some mutual ones.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, one or two of those. I think for us, I mean, Ian and I and Andy, of course, when we started this idea of Money Alive some 7 years ago, the key to us was this better information, better decision, better outcome. And it's still on the whiteboard, actually, even after 7 years. And the thing was, it was all about this educational function that's needed, or we believed was needed, within the financial advisor firm or advisor to their client or prospect, indeed, to make sure that they were better prepared for an advice point. So when we started that was the idea of it. It was just how to do that. And then how do you deliver that content? And really for us, that's always been about a media solution, because that is the best way. As we all know, when we get home at night and we put up our iPad and watch the latest Netflix video, that's the best way that we absorb and learn and understand. The challenge has been the hump in the road and the perception of advisors and companies that works. And actually what we have to keep doing is putting loads and loads of PDFs out there and text and the rest of it, without the consideration of how somebody would perhaps like to learn or understand sometimes a very, I dare to say this, but boring subject as well as a complex subject. But
John, you always say it's fun. You always say it's fun in your
Yeah, well, but my comment, and sorry, Ian's kind of jumped in, because the point with it is that when I do, well, again, I guess it's pre-COVID, but where we're doing an awful lot more of stand-up in roomfuls of advisors who I just said, you know what we do? We're Money Alive. We put pensions and fun in the same sentence. And you get, it's my only best, that's my best Tommy Cooper line. That's it. That's as good as I get. Ian's way better with the jokes. But everybody goes, they're laughing. He said, well, hang on a minute. Imagine if you could do that. What would that mean to your business? And then the 2 ears open, and then people listen to what we've got to say. I wouldn't quite call it fun, but what I would say, it's about engagement.
And I think
the road is that.
I think for me, that's the bit. So when we've talked about this, and you guys are really passionate about trying to impart knowledge, and that can be consumer, it can be advisor, education, statements, all those things, are shrouded in mystery, aren't they? People don't read the stuff they get sent, and it's no little wonder, really. I mean, we get inundated with information, and the way we get it delivered is not, readily and easily consumable. So I personally think the way, the path you've chosen to tread and trying to educate the people around you is not an easy one, but it certainly feels like it makes absolute sense as a consumer. And I think we're all consumer champions. that was the reason I was quite keen for us all to talk really in this environment.
Can I just come in as well, just to build on something John said, as well as the poor engagement of traditional methods. The other issue that we all identified was the trust, or the lack of trust, because of things like scandals. So if you say the word pension, the first word that might come into someone's head is scandal, or scammed. And we spoke to a academic psychologist actually, and talked to her about through the advice process and generally people's consumption of financial communications. And she immediately just said, look, the problem is skin in the game. If an annuity company sends you an impartial education piece about which is the best pension freedom option, you're immediately going to be suspicious, aren't you? Really, even though I know there's superb work done by a lot of organizations, but if someone wants to sell an annuity, it's just possible that the education might be skewed for whatever reason, or it isn't, but it's just perceived as that. So I think having third-party impartiality is something that in our research shows is highly valued. So what we did is create third-party impartial content for people to use in their process. So there you go, trust and engagement, Paul.
And also this whole remote COVID thing. I mean, again, it felt like things should have accelerated quicker than they actually did, because people were trying to just deal with business as usual, weren't they? I did a podcast with Alex Tatham recently, who's the exec director at West Coast, who sort of ship more hardware. They're very much involved in solutions and software, but than anybody else in the UK really, around mobile devices and all that sort of stuff. And it felt like, the sheer numbers he was talking about, what they had to deal with during COVID, emphasised where everybody's line of sight was. We just got to keep trading. They didn't think about, well, how do we deal with people that are now at a distance from us? They probably always have been, by the way, but let's think about this. And I think therefore, some of the topics that we all take for granted, they're really important. Consumers, like you say, there's mistrust out there.
Another point, Paul, just speaking to what you're saying about people being at home, is that people who watch Money Alive box sets get to consume the information at a convenient time for themselves on a device, on their favorite device. And we often encourage people to make a cup of tea and watch something about final salary transfer. Watch it as many times as you like. You don't have to have this coincidence of availability between advisor and the client. Yeah. And I think, John's had a lot of success in the last few years with equity release, where there's clearly vulnerability in that market. Yeah. And one of the things we did was to encourage people to share the educational experience with a loved one or a trusted person. Now that's different to the advice situation, because effectively you don't bring your mate in with you to see your financial advisor necessarily, do you? But you can sit and watch a box set and have a chat about it. And there may be interested parties, like in a lasting power of attorney or a will. So, for example, when my parents did lasting power of attorney, I sent them our box set, and then they knew what all the parties were. So before they spoke to their advisor about it, they knew that the different parties to it and the kind of qualities you might be looking for. Like, obviously, I said to I'm perfect, mum and dad, because I'm trustworthy.
He says with a Monday stink advert behind him. I love that. Minions poster behind is brilliant. Sorry.
Yeah, that's from my daughter. But yeah, so that's that other point: sharing the experience, doing it in your own home, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think I'd take that on obviously COVID created a scenario. If there's any, from our point of view, if you can call it a silver lining, I don't know whether that's controversial to say that or not, but the expectations changed of the consumer towards this style of engagement, and there was all sorts going on, every Zooming and Teaming and whatever, and now you see it in the younger generation anyway. But the older generation, that of which I definitely put myself in, began to engage way more and with an expectation, and that was a bit of a watershed for us, because we're saying to advisors, look, you should. It really works. Your clients will really enjoy this. But they love. I got a brochure, the annual report that came in from a very large investment trust company the other day for my 176 shares that I own in it. Not a great deal, but I reckon the cost of the brochure was more than the amount of value I had in the company.
Yeah.
And it was, and genuinely, it was 142 pages.
God.
And you're going, okay, I'm going to go and read this. Am I? I'm not. There's a tree that I've just chopped down for it. So the whole thing, there's lots of other dynamics about why media, and rich media, as we call it, is so powerful as the conduit.
Yeah.
It's taking, if people are into sustainability and all of this kind of things, we are a natural for that. We don't promote our business in any way or shape in that regard. Now we're building content in that we'll start talking about that. But the point is that we're always, I think Ian and I would, and Andy, I keep Andy as well, we're always seem to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of where people are coming to.
Yeah.
And and that's probably down to our technical team and Aaron, who's our architect, if you like, our chief product officer, who is, he's always seeing over the horizon with what's going on.
That pace difference, we identify that with that a lot, and being ahead of the curve. And a lot of big companies in our industry are very sensitive to risk and doing something different, not even necessarily opening themselves up to doing something controversial, but doing something different. There's a lot of doubt around that, and that leads to a huge amount of effort going into share, persuade, coax people towards solutions which they cannot fundamentally see a reason why they shouldn't be doing it, but they still don't rush to do it, and that's a lot of hard work goes into doing that, which is probably something that shouldn't be. It's
painful. John and I chatted about it anyway. It's like, I love that saying when you meet people and you're in a business, they go, right place, right time. You think, oh my God, if you only knew just how much time. And I know you guys, when we've shared war stories with the providers with whom you work now, and just how much time you've had to sort of take them through the process of understanding why they should work. It just makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, it's not a huge leap to get why the nature of what you provide should work in so many places. So I mean, just for the purposes of the audience, in case they, hopefully most people know Money and Live understand what you do. But for me, and forgive me, but one, you've got I wrote the words down as you were chatting there, the sort of policing advice process, giving people a roadmap of education which they can, assign to almost, accept they've seen and understood as a gate to their moving to advice. Because there's some real, some of your box sets cover very sensitive topics, which historically the regulators had a real go at people on, and that's about de-risking some of that advice process. So that's one application, which I think is really interesting. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about that. I mean, that is education based. Can I
just come in, Paul, actually? The thing about people saying they've understood thing was all about trying to get people to ask questions as they consume the media. Because as John said at the beginning, it was the better outcome that was the driver for this business, and continues to be. So therefore, we're not trying to trick people in saying, I understand that, I've read an 80-page document. We break the topic down into bite-sized chunks. And at the end of each short video, the person is asked if they've understand it or if they've got any questions. Those are recorded for the advisor. The objective is consumer understanding. So perfectly for consumer duty. It wasn't originally to become a risk management tool, although it has become so. And we work with, for example, Bear Rock as part of an initiative to help people, advisors, attract better PII cover, because there was a threat to the industry not long ago, particularly with final salary, that the shortage of PII cover meant that the advice could effectively disappear, frankly.
And from good advice as well. That was a problem. So that was listening. But that thing about, and I wrote it actually following the earlier presentations that we did earlier today, or that we both Ian and I listened in on, it's the route to outcome. It's all about saying, okay, I'm going to set somebody up on a journey, and that journey is a box set, just like watching The Crown or Breaking Bad or what have you. You're taking people along a series of these little 3-5 minute bite-sized pieces that can build, in the case of some of our box sets, up to 68 minutes in length. Now, if you ask somebody to go and watch 68 minutes on pensions in one fast swoop, you'd be throwing sticks at them, at the presenter, no matter how good they are. But by breaking it down so they can dip in and dip out, but take them on this prescribed journey of understanding. And some people, advisors, we always encourage our advisors to watch our content before obviously they send it out, and the vast majority will do that. They'll say, "Oh, you repeated things 2 or 3 times." So, yeah, we did, because it was important that element needs to be drilled into the word. Emphasized. But the other part of it is that by taking somebody along that line, and Ian mentioned it before, that convenience, at their convenience, that point's really critical. But by the time they get to the end of this, and I'll come up to the statistic that is the result of all of this, is the client can then step forward to the next part. Now, that is up to the advisor. So the advisor can say, actually, the system just told me they finished, I'll ring him up or her up. Or they can click a button at the end of the last video. A lot of great video out there and just leaves you hanging. You don't know what to do next. Our idea is that actually we can just click the next video, the next page, and that will take them directly into an advisor's diary, or arrange a time for a call, or download a brochure, or move them onto a cash flow model, whatever it may be. So the system has been very deliberately designed. So you're evolving somebody's interest as a route to outcome. And along the way, they can dip in with their questions, which are fantastic, usually personal to them, that the advisor can address. They can get a better sense of where that customer is thinking. All of this is great stuff. And obviously, when we started with risk and governance departments. Some of our large clients, that's where it started. Hang on. So you can evidence all that this has happened, and we can prove that we have provided the education and they have understood it. So this is where, in reference to earlier, actually it became a very important risk, and it continues to be so, which of course Consumer Duty is absolutely doing. It's saying you've got to offer consumer understanding or education, and you've got to evidence that you've done it. Now, with board reporting coming along on July the 31st, we're just sat there going, well, don't reinvent the wheel. You've got it already.
Yeah.
Another quick point while we're talking about Consumer Duty is the importance of keeping information up to date as well. Of course, we do all the heavy lifting there. So on the 6th of April, 19 videos on our platform changed because of things like changes in the state pension, changes to lifetime allowance, the way death works. None of our customers had to raise a finger to do any of that. It was all done for them. So that's another benefit. The FCA want people to be served information that helps them make a decision. Yeah, I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to upset anyone. But if it doesn't take long to look on some quite big financial services websites to find content that is quite seriously out of date. Yeah, it's a complete ball acher. Yeah, it's a complete ball. I mean, there are, honestly, I won't name names, but there's some big ones that are just full of misleading information. And part of our responsibility is to keep box sets up to date.
So what do you think it is fundamentally, being a bit contentious for a minute, why is our industry, talking about financial services, because I know there are applications, I'm sure, if not, I'm sure you're progressing them already. In fact, I want to talk about one of them for your tech anyway. But why is our industry so poor at moving at any pace, do you think? I mean, is it the scale of the business involved? Is it, is it risk? I mean, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you go after me, Ian, but just one thing I'd say is I don't think it's malicious or deliberate.
No,
I've got a war story about this from several years ago, the previous business where we worked with media about. I was pitching to do some video with a very large investment management business we know and love, and they're a brilliant business. And we were pitching to try and get their fund managers videoed and their economic updates videoed. And we did the pitch, we presented, we put a proposal in, went through, and heard nothing. Thought, chasing up, doing our normal sales, where is it? All this kind of fingers crossed. And then I just happened to look on their website and I saw April economic or market update. I thought, we've missed out. They've gone. This was in April, May, as it happened. And so I found, I rang them. I said, look, I need to speak to somebody about this. I just would have appreciated that we didn't win the business, et cetera, et cetera. And the got to the lady in marketing, said, what video? I said, well, the video's on your website. Well, we haven't made any decisions yet. Yeah, but you've got a video saying April economic or investment update on your website. And this is on a very large business we know and love. And she went, oh my, and a bit of an expletive, that's 3 years out of date. And the point is that's the problem. It's about how do you manage media? How do you control it's live? We call ours live media. How the heck do you keep on top of that? And the clever part of what we do, which is not to do with Ian or I, is what Aaron developed all those years ago, which is to enable you change one video, you change it for all.
Yeah.
That is the clever bit of tech, actually.
Changing the direction of an oil tanker, although an oil tanker might not be a great, not particularly ESG now, is it? Perhaps it's an electric tanker. But
my answer to your why is it hard? Because you're asking people to take a step back. So in progress, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The type of implementation that we're talking about requires people to take a step back. They then may take 10 steps forward, but nevertheless, you're asking to do something quite differently, change their process, introduce a different element. And, we've talked about benefit statements, but if you've got all your printers in place and all the arrangements in place, undoing all that and sending a video out instead is a complete hoo-ha, isn't it? And it's hard work. And, we could say, look, it's 10 times better. You people will actually watch it. You'll get interaction. You'll get evidence of communication, and you'll save a fortune in terms of planet. But it is going to involve some work. And it's like, I just don't have time. Some people are so busy, aren't they?
I think. Sorry, Ian. One of the things that is always quite amusing, though painful, is the disconnect of someone who looks at things as a consumer of them and goes, "Oh, wow, that'd be amazing! I'd love that." And then as a offerer of those solutions to people, go, "Yeah, I don't think they would use that. I don't think our customers would really like that." And it's amazing how many times you have that conversation.
Yeah. It's bad, isn't it? Actually, we just from a chronology perspective. John mentioned the fact we just come out of another session. Ian and John, you very kindly attended the output of some research we did, and we were very keen to get you looped into it, because resoundingly what came out was that product providers are so focused on what they do, they forget about their customers. And I think probably that point you just made, Adam, is the perfect articulation of it. If you ask them individually what they think they'd like to see, and yet the oil tanker isn't able to turn in a circle or to even shift off of its current axis quick enough to give them any change, back to the reticence to change, Adam, isn't it?
I would highly recommend the session you did this morning about the problems with attracting people to portals. And I believe a recording is available. Is that right, Paul?
Nice plug. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I used to say to people who design like digital assets, and I did this when I was marketing director of Tilney. I did it a bit myself, and I witnessed it. People spend ages thinking about what their proposition is. They think ages about how to explain it, but they don't think about how to get traffic to actually engage with it. So my kind of thought about a portal is you should start with the assumption that 50% of your time should be thinking about how to get people into the portal, and 50% should be building assets for the portal. But I reckon if you look at most organizations, it will be 1% thinking about how to get people into a portal and 99% building it. And I think, I would say to everyone doing them, draw a line and say, right, I've got 35 hours this week. I'm going to do 17 and a half. I hope I've got the maths right here. 17 and a half hours on content for the portal, 17 and a half hours on how the hell I'm going to get people into the portal.
Yeah.
And if you deviate from that, fair enough, but don't deviate very much.
And I'll add a point to that, which I was desperate to try and add in the chat, but I couldn't. I was getting onto Ian about, is once you've got them in the portal, how do you keep them engaged in it? So that's the other thing. So when you pulling these the assets together, the best product you can possibly have, or the best deliverer of content you can, is video. I know it's really boring because that's what we do, but the one thing that again we observe is once you get somebody into a video experience, and it might be a 3-minute video, but if you do it in the right way, they'll be on for 5 or 6 minutes, because they might want to ask you a question. And I'll let Ian go a bit further with the evolution of the video canvas proposition. because that's all. It's not the fact that the video is 3 or 5 minutes long. It's that you're asking client to interact with it and give you more information. Now imagine if your portal, you spent all this money on a portal, you've got, it's brilliant, they look fantastic, it's all the bells and whistles, and then you're gluing by positive engagement that viewer, that customer, that prospect into that experience. So they go, wow, I learned something off that. It took me some.
Before you go down the video canvas one, because I was just about to lead into that, and I was going to sort of actually ask Adam, because that personalized statementing piece, I think, is where this comes into play, and how you can really, really personalize content so people engage. And I think that's where things sort of intersect for our propositions to a certain extent. And Adam, you and I were chatting about that before, weren't we?
Yeah, certainly. As Ian suggested, we're working with some joint customers, and where the very clever video canvassing tech is being applied there, considering around delivery of that as well, and knitting both the secure email service together with the delivery of that video canvas statementing, and Ian will describe what that does a lot better than me, but I think there feels like there is a really good fit to drive a real positive solution for customers that way. But Ian, do you want to just do a few minutes on video canvas and how that's pulling forward new delivery of personalization and really showing some fantastic results there?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah. So the first point I would make is just about security, because I think that's the thing that our two organizations have in common. Beyond encryption is about secure communication. What we're about is allowing people to deliver video, personalized video experience to their customers, their clients, their members in a secure way. And what I mean by that is without having the need to pass data to a third party. And one of the key differentiators of video canvas is that our customers can install it on their own infrastructure. So we don't get their customers' data, we don't get their members' data, which is a real benefit. So and because of that security, our customers are comfortable at sharing very personal information, because, as I say, it's not leaving our infrastructure, it's not leaving their infrastructure. The basic premise of a video canvas is it's got that name for a very good reason, because it's partially a video and partially a canvas. The video is a presenter talking the viewer through usually some form of presentation. That could be a video annual benefit statement, it could be a quotation, it could be an educational experience, more generic. But
and that was even avatars as well. I saw you were using all sorts of new wave AI sort of technology around now. You can get an avatar to start doing narratives. Really cool. Yeah,
we've got a number of suppliers of avatars, and what we tend to do for our customers is create a show reel where the avatar introduces themselves to our customer and says, "Hey, I'm this person," and it's fun. And technology is moving at a pace in that market. So most people, we noticed at the beginning when we were testing it, is women who can usually spot an avatar first. But I think me and John were thinking, "Wow, that's amazing!" And avatars are brilliant in terms of being able to update something, for example. So, in the past, if you've been filming Mark Thewlis on a beach, saying the annual allowance is this, and it turns out it isn't anymore. That is a nightmare from a production point of view. But with an avatar, with an avatar, obviously you can make that alteration much more quickly. So therefore, again, you might feel more comfortable about putting information into an experience that has a relatively short shelf life, because so long as you know that it needs updating, in which case you can increase its relevance. And this is the real benefit, I think, of I've learned from what we've done recently, is making it as personal as possible, serve as a little irrelevant information to somebody, and talk to them about their story and their circumstances. And we have so many ways of doing that. Classic example is something like scene variants. So somebody who watches a video canvas from the same company might have a different experience because they're in a different cohort. They might be in a different age group. They might have a bigger pension pot. but our video cameras can effectively interrogate their data and say, oh, this person is between the age of 50 and 59. Play them this version of scene.
Yeah, therefore this makes more sense. Yeah,
exactly. So you can, with one video canvas, you can get very, very personalized experiences. And of course, the more personal you make it, the less time that you are taking off someone. Because the first time we ever realized this was when we tried to do something about wills, and we ran into this problem of Scotland having different rules to England and Wales and Northern Ireland.
And that's a good intersection with another subject. So of course, financial services is dear to all of our hearts. We've all been involved with it for such a long time. But we were chatting the other day as well, and I met up recently with Andy Gething at Morgan Ash, their Mars system, the Morgan Ash resiliency solution and that system, should I say, which was interesting because this whole thing about vulnerability and ensuring you're catering for those that perhaps have, visual or audio impairments and all that stuff. I mean, the areas this can cover, it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, suddenly you're opening up and dealing with. I mean, you had some extraordinary stats without naming names again. I think we were chatting the other day to one a high street brand, we'll say, who suggested that 11% of their audience were vulnerable. And then you mentioned some stats which were in stark contrast to that, Adam, the other end of the scale, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, another large provider had done some work looking at it, and they believe that at any one time, and considering vulnerability to be a very transient thing, and thinking much wider than just people who have hearing impairments, sight issues, or and they came up with a stat which was 74% of their customers at any one time could be considered to be vulnerable. Because they're going through divorce, marriage, new children, weddings, illness, buying houses, all sorts of things will impact people's ability to absorb information, and feel that they need to shut down a bit at that time. And that's that. So it was quite refreshing to hear that sort of outlook, actually.
I mean, with respect to people who have got visual impairments or cognitive disabilities, we have a dedicated version of Video Canvas, an accessible version, and viewers can change the color contrast. It does text to speech, and they can also take they have some flexibility in terms of controlling the imagery as well, and they can toggle between the two. I mean, that is really powerful. Again, all can be self-hosted, so it can be secure. It's a really, really exciting development. We haven't actually told the world, but we have put a blog about it on our website. But we haven't driven any traffic to it yet. We don't know.
But it's also this is not the domain of financial services. I mean, I saw in chatting to Andy, that they that the solution they've built in terms of trying to monitor, report on, which is an obligation, I think, under financial services. I think Alan told me that. I know late last year there was some more guidance came out for the utilities firms that Andy's business is, Morgan Ash are also working with. So in the context of, that suddenly opens up a whole new, set of, potential users for technology like this, doesn't it? So it's really important stuff. You're considering that whole broader demographic of UK population, the problems they're trying to deal with. So it's good. It's good that you've got that, in your thinking.
Just take that on a bit, Paul. I've got a good friend of mine a few years ago who's working with one of the big utility companies, and we're talking about what we were doing at Money Alive. This is kind of early days, and you think, because we've always felt, I mean, we've been very focused in on financial services, whether that's the institutional market, pensions and so forth, or traditional, but this has got a huge, like anything, it's just finding the time to do that thing. And anyway, so I was chatting to him about it. He said, well, if you ever do video for us, said you have to have it in 13 different languages because of the size of the business and the number of employees we have from Eastern Europe and so forth. Big utility. So one of the things that's built into how we are thinking is if somebody is lucky enough to watch a Money Alive video, one of the traditional ones, they can watch it on any device in any way. That's the first thing. If they can get the voiceover, they'll get the voiceover, but it's also closed captioned. So you can amend. So if we ever got in that environment where you were getting into that kind of requirement, accessibility, in other words. So vulnerability is accessibility, if you think of it in that way. If you can't access it, you're vulnerable to not understanding. So the accessibility is that you then use the closed captioning, that's the subtitling, to amend to be able to meet 13 different languages with one video.
Yeah.
So we're just about to do our first Welsh video canvas. So kind of looking forward to that. It's literally the order has just come in. Yeah. And talking about, Adam was talking about vulnerability. One of our newest customer, who I'm not going to name because we're still subject to NDA, but their second video canvas is about pensions and divorce. So you were talking about vulnerability, not from a kind of impairment point of view, but a life moment point of view.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to use some of the scene variants a little bit, so it's more crafted towards a particular type of inquiry that they've had. Interesting.
Very cool. Conscious of time, so I'm gonna move more personally onto stuff here, and a quick focus on Ian. So Ian, before we close out, and I've got one closing question, but you got to tell us about the industry ban. So I feel like we had a slight nudging of this, or there's nothing really to do with us at all. But you're a bit famous, I think, in the industry these days. And I'm quite pleased we could get you on this session. I figure we might need talk to your agent or something. But do you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, so I think you're understating the role of Beyond Encryption. So I was at one of your excellent events. It was a couple of years ago. It was post.
Soho, wasn't it? That bar in Soho. I remember us all being quite inebriated.
Yeah, I couldn't comment about that, but I got speaking to one of your guests from PIMFA, a guy called Nigel Ross Scott. It turned out to be an outstanding bass player. And he'd actually, his band had supported the Police when they did their Synchronicity tour of US. So he's a top draw player. So we got chatting, and it was like, shall we start an industry band? And we consulted with a few people in the room, and universally it seemed to be like a good idea. So I've in my time, I've thought of some quite good names for products, like the ISA Shop Ltd. That was one of my earlier very, very good names. So I think I came out with the worst name ever for a band, which was Consumer Duty. And so we had let's call it Consumer Duty. And then I think it was a PFS introduced us to Chris Bird from the Institute of Financial Wellbeing. He knew the singer Jenny. We all knew Mark Paulson.
Mark Paulson as well, yeah. We saw you at an event. Which event was that, Adam? We saw it. Was it the?
That was the PFS festival.
It was a PFS festival, yeah.
I think I saw you running for the door.
No, you're being very modest. You're very good. But it was it's a really cool thing. I know you did stuff raising money for Ukraine and all sorts of stuff. So it's a very cool thing. Very cool thing. Listen, this has been really fascinating. But I always like to, I think, close out on a final question, which is the same one every time. I did give you a bit of an advantage over other people, which is to tell you what it's going to be, which is, if you were able to sail back in time and meet your younger self, what would be some words of wisdom you'd share with yourself? Any answers from the floor welcomed. I'm not going to answer.
Put an accumulator on red rum, I think.
That would have been good.
I think it's just the courage. To me, it's all about the courage of your convictions and following them through. I mean, I say that with my kids, and he's been lucky enough to study music. He's a musician, and he's been able to take it all the way through uni. So he's following his passion, his vocation, and that would be my observation. Your vocation, and been lucky enough to be able to do the both.
I mean, mine would have always been to have actually paid more attention and got my head down a bit more at school. To be honest, I think that was something I could have made a lot more of, and I didn't. And it's not till you're older that you appreciate what a gift that is. And trying now to persuade my daughter the same is going down equally as well as my parents trying to persuade me.
Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. Are we leaving you with the red rum? Are we in?
Yeah. I think I would have encouraged myself to. I enjoy running, but I didn't start doing that until I was quite a lot older, because at school I don't think I would have thought of myself as any good at it. So I think I would have suggested that, and maybe don't care so much what other people think, really. Just do what you enjoy doing. Really.
Yeah, what you love. Yeah. No, brilliant.
Yeah.
Listen, Ian, John, thank you very much, and Adam, of course. But thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Guys.
Looking forward to doing more in the future. All the best. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Much appreciated.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.